Hello, loves, and welcome to the Empowered Curiosity podcast. Now, I don't know if you've had this experience with folks that you've met, but I don't know, I kind of feel like I have these like weird off the wall thoughts sometimes that people don't always understand until like I've fully distilled it down into something a little bit more palatable. And I always think it's so special when I get to meet people who are able to receive my ideas in their like mushy clay unformed stage. And that's kind of who Emma is for me. She and I, it's been years since we've been able to actually see each other in person, but I'm so glad that we get to connect. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I think technology is actually a pretty fantastic thing is I get to stay connected to beautiful humans like Emma. So before we get into it, let me tell you a little bit about Emma. I'm going to read you her bio here. So Emma's work lives in the intersection where mindset, creativity, and personal development collide. She believes that our societal obsession with reaching goals and healing ourselves has caused us to lose sight of the activities that truly give our lives meaning and allow us to contribute to the world in a meaningful way. In her work as a coach, writer, speaker, and mentor, Emma guides people out of their heads and back to their lives using creativity and their intrinsic motivation as tools. Tough love, words of encouragement, and the science of mindset and motivation are the secret sauce that Emma uses to inspire her clients to love themselves, push themselves, trust themselves, and get out of their lives as their true selves just a little more each day. Now, Emma has been on the podcast before. If you go all the way back into the beginning archives, she was actually on episode number 11. So it's been a while since she's been back on the podcast, but it was such an interesting experience. Back then, we were actually talking about pregnancy and embodying power in birth and beyond. And it's such a fun conversation contrasted to what we talk about in today's conversation, which is really about creating balance and playing the long game. And she brings in such beautiful insights that she's learned as being a mama to her beautiful little daughter. And as always, we sort of keep the conversation focused on spiritual entrepreneurship, but she's got these beautiful ways of bringing tangible examples and embodied examples based on her relationship to her kid. So I think this is going to be a really valuable conversation for you if you are a spiritual entrepreneur who feels really passionate about your work, but you also want to make space for your personal life and your soul to flourish. I think that's such an important part of what it is that we do. It's not just this paycheck that we're cashing in, right? Like we really want to make sure that we are aligning our businesses in such a way that your soul feels alive. This is also for somebody who wants to know how letting your business grow and blossom at a slower pace can help you reach and sustain your own version of success. Again, this is where I think her insights as a parent comes into play so beautifully and in such a tangible way. So in this conversation, some of the bullet points of what you're going to learn are that there are spiritual, physical, and financial costs to building a business too quickly and focusing primarily on a monetary gain. I think that is how social media really paints this picture of get in there fast, be able to make a ton of money. There's this lifestyle of the online coach that is kind of a cliche at this point that both of us are saying is not just unhealthy, but is actually perpetuating a trauma wound. And it's actually pushing forward this narrative of productivity and success and like looking for those external markers rather than actually looking within yourself and asking yourself, what does success look like for you? That's one of the concepts that we cover is how your version of success can look vastly different to someone else's, how there's not this like one size fits all strategy that's going to allow you to build your life and your business the way that you want. It's really that internal practice of going within and actually that looking within allows you to build your business slowly with intention. And with that slowness actually comes the ability to pivot and evolve with the seasons of your life and make decisions based on your values and really align with your intuition. We also talk about how the physical and the emotional needs that we tend to override in our modern culture is a learned behavior that blocks us from creating our own version of balance and success. And just acknowledging here as a listener, that balance and success is really an individualistic process, and no one can prescribe that for you. And I think I said this in the last episode that I had Emma on, which was back on episode 11. But one of the beautiful things that Emma brings to the table is she's like a walking permission slip. And you get to really hear that energy. And to me, it's such a nourishing conversation to have with somebody who is fully committed to really exploring with curiosity what it is that you want to do. What is it that you want to build? What does success look like for you? So I hope that this conversation is just as nourishing for you as it is for me. And I'm so excited that I get to share my dear friend Emma with you. Welcome to the show, Emma. Oh my gosh, this conversation has been a really, really, really long time coming. Oh my gosh, we've had to reschedule this episode. I think this is our third or fourth time trying to record, and like, God willing, this is gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's about 4 times.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think actually before we hit record, Emma and I sat down and we were like, okay, so what do we want to talk about? There's this concept around work-life balance that we want to share. And I think that actually like our experience of having to like reschedule multiple times is a good expression of that work-life balance. And of course, we're going to go so much deeper than just, the superficial layers of what a work-life balance looks like. But we had to reschedule because I got sick, and then your kid got sick, and then I got sick again, and then there was like a windstorm where you were. And so we've really had to honor a lot of things outside of business to make this conversation just happen.
Yeah. And I'll just say it's been so amazing just being in conversation with you around rescheduling it's such a refreshing experience to do it with somebody who has the same values as me and the same just like realistic viewpoint of life and business. So whereas like there isn't any stress to reschedule because life does happen, and that's a very different vibe than working with other business and podcasters who are so much more concerned about things happening exactly when they want them to happen and like get really frustrated when life gets in the way. So just the whole experience of all the rescheduling has been really easy. Obviously there's some stress attached to it, but just having someone like you who's so receiving and like, yeah, this is normal life. Like, what are you going to do? There's a windstorm. I'm sick. You have no voice. I have no voice. Your kid is sick. Like, it's happening. Why get stressed about it?
Yeah.
So it's really been a beautiful experience and teacher in that regard. Just watching like, and I think you probably experienced this too, but when I had to cancel on you, I was like nervous kind of sending the email because no one likes to do that last minute. I think it was even the same day because I did it the same day and then you did it the same day because we were both waiting to see if the symptoms would get better. Right? Because it's like when you're on the cusp, you don't know if it's getting better or worse. And there can be so much stress just involved in sending out those communications because you don't necessarily know how they're going to be received. And it was so interesting to just witness that and to be in that experience with you.
Yeah. And honestly, I think the stress of it was because I really just wanted to hang out and talk with you. Like, totally. Like it was just this like real like desire of like wanting for this conversation to happen and feeling that like stagnation point of like, nope, not now, not today, not today.
Yeah. And like when you feel this stuff is alive in you and like we don't get to connect that often and we have such great conversations. It's like, oh, I'm just so craving a conversation with Kat and I feel really passionate about this topic. And sometimes the words are there and life doesn't cooperate,
Yeah.
and so you have to just trust that it'll happen when it happens. You really have no choice, right? But to trust that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, I mean, I think our conversation is going to flow however it's going to flow, but like this concept of work-life balance for spiritual entrepreneurs. And I love your take of using creativity as a tool to like sort of shepherd that process and allow for that process to flow rather than having it be this very structured yang energy of like you need to set aside x amount of time or you need to, and it just like your life ends up becoming another tick mark on your to-do list, so
Yeah.
can you just like expand that out a little bit for our listeners to get a little bit of context there?
Yeah, that's such a big, there's so many topics in that, even in that question to
Absolutely.
dive into. I feel like what I see a lot of the time is we see these spiritual entrepreneurs and influencers, coaches, etc., who we really admire, and they're encouraging us to create a life of our own, right? And to find and live our purpose, live it out loud, live it, push past our edge, live to the fullest every single day. And so a lot of people like invest in these business coaching programs, or they feel like I have this great idea or this life inside of me and I'm doing it an injustice by taking my time. So there's like this real agitation that we see and also admiration that we see of our influencers and our mentors living a certain life that we want.
Absolutely.
But then when people in the beginning stages with their businesses, let's call them spiritual or creative entrepreneurs, they're just like new in their business, and also they have a full life outside. So not only are they building confidence in their new path or in their new voice, they're also trying to do it amidst a very busy life. And I find that the people that we look up to, they make it look so easy, and there's lots going on behind the scenes that aren't really showing in their easy life. And we also forget the journey that they took to get there. Like we don't see the 10 years of somebody at 0 followers doing things for free, right? We miss that side of it in only seeing their success, but then also they're kind of selling us this like selling the hustle culture to spiritual entrepreneurs, which to me, I've found with people that I've worked with and listened to, it's very challenging because they start to feel just badly about their work ethic, or they think their idea is never going to work because they can't find the time to fit it into their life. And it creates a lot of kind of shame and not necessarily the best work ethic or the best work-life balance. And what I have really been speaking to lately is that if you want to create a business that supports your life, that is meaningful to you, you can't do it from a place of hustle. We think, oh, I'm just going to burn the midnight oil until one day I won't have to anymore. But all you're doing is building that muscle and that habit of burning the midnight oil, and you're reinforcing this internalized busyness is attached to my worthiness belief. You just keep reinforcing that,
Totally.
that, and it's contradictory to the end goal that we're actually trying to achieve. So what my shtick is like we have to deconstruct those narratives and like unwire our brain and like unwire our muscle of hustle and build our business with a muscle of ease, because that's the only real way that we're going to end up at this end point of being in a relationship with our business and our work that actually supports us living as a human being and human needs. We've hacked so many of our human needs, and humans are different than nature in terms of like a squirrel can't ignore his bodily needs, or his needs of nourishment or rest the way that humans can. So we can override ourselves so much more than the rest of nature can. And we think that it's this great thing that we can do, but it's doing us a real disservice. And also what I've seen so often is these spiritual entrepreneurs that we admire who are teaching amazing things out in the world, many of them actually really, really lack work-life balance. They don't have it behind the scenes. And so I want to really help and support new entrepreneurs in not falling for that
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
creating a better relationship with them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's so
That was
important
a lot.
for us. You know, it's a lot, but there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
And, you know, also one of the reasons why I love having conversations with you is because there's I mean, Instagram is rife with this, right? Of like there being a very curated version that we show online. And like, of course, there
Yeah.
needs to be a sense of boundaries and a sense of like, nobody gets all of me, right? But I don't know, I feel so passionate about showing people actually, this is what my day looks like. These are the actual real struggles that I have. You know, these are the real things that are going to come up on your journey, and I get so frustrated with this idea of like, oh, you can make six figures in 12 weeks, or like there's a
Yeah.
lot of this like selling of this really big end product and not recognizing the cost that that takes.
Yeah, to your point, this multiple six-figure goal that is just being hooked everywhere. I feel like I actually, whenever I hear that, I'm kind of inside, I'm just like, oh, come on. Like, can't you figure out a better way to sell your services than to, like, obviously everybody's going to latch to that, right? And be like, oh, I want to work with this coach because they're going to get me to multiple six figures. But the more we buy into that, the more we promote it, the more it becomes the only goal. And to your point, there is a big cost to running a multiple six-figure business. And I want to know, well, what is that business doing for the world? And is it supporting your actual life? So it's twofold. It's like, am I running a multiple six-figure business, creating Etsy digital downloads, or like printing off stickers or gift basket, rewards, or like little, to me, I'm like, those aren't meaningful to the world because they don't solve the world's problems or create, good things for the environment, et cetera. So I want to know, like, what's your business doing for the world and what's it doing for you and how is it resourcing you so that you can show up in the world in a way that contributes to the challenges and the needs of society and humanity. And even if that's just on a small scale within your own community, right? Like we don't have to be solving all of the world's problems in all of our work, but I feel it's important to connect to some foundational value for your work and for your life and really think about what success and life balance and a work of meaning looks like for you
Yeah.
and have the permission to do it your own way.
I feel like there's two ways
Yeah.
that we can unpack this, and it's like on both sides of the equation. Is the, multiple six figure, revenue business. Like I don't think there's anything wrong of having that goal, but it's also about like defining what does success look like for you. I, for one,
Yeah.
would love to have a multiple six figure business at some point in my life, but I also don't have kids that I'm running around after. Like, I love that I get to hear Aurora in the background. um, and so, like, I have a little bit more time than somebody else who does have a kid or multiple children. And so the like investment of the effort and like I don't know, sometimes I do think about my business as being my baby as well. That makes sense for some people. And if we're talking about regenerative businesses, there's also this level of like, what is enough? I think that part
Yeah.
of the like toxicity of capitalism is this idea of constant consumption and this constant need to always be pushing the bar and moving forward and growing and growing and growing for growth's sake. And so there is a point I think that we all need to ask ourselves as spiritual entrepreneurs, because the investment of your time, your energy, all these hidden costs of running a business like that
Mm.
is like there's going to be a point at which the cost does not outweigh the benefit. And
Yeah.
if we don't stop and like slow down and get an integrity with how much is enough, and and it's like I think about this in terms of like farming. There's like a certain capacity that a plot of land is able to produce. And we
Yeah.
don't have that same sort of idea or concept when we think about our businesses. We think that because it's not a plot of land that's like a physical, tangible, you can see, you can only grow so many carrots on this plot of land. We think that our energy is just this expendable, constantly renewable resource, which is not
Mm.
true, you know?
Right. We exactly. That's exactly it because we can override our saturation point, I guess you could say. Where humans are able to override it in a way that ecosystems and animals are not, unless they have human interference, which I think has been shown not to be that advantageous in the
I mean,
long
that's what
run.
monocultures are, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And all the growing agents and herbicides and pesticides, like that has been humans trying to override and increase the output. And there's ways of doing that while staying in capacity and in integrity. And there's ways of doing that with staying out of capacity, out of integrity. And we've normalized our ability to override and push and push and push. But that doesn't mean that we actually don't have a tipping point or a capacity. We're just not aware of it anymore.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
been entirely normalized to hustle. And it actually, marketers feed on the shame of people and the desire to just, oh, you just need to overcome your money blocks, that, and then you'll receive. And of course there's energetics there that to work with receiving and resources, but it's not as simple as you're just blocking yourself. And who are you to not give your gift to the world? And you should be making millions of dollars a year. And that's just not the full conversation.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think the other part of the equation to really unpack here too is this concept of time and like the investment of time. And I think that there's the way that I see a lot of marketing out there for business coaching is how can we get you to that end product in this like shortest amount of time possible?
Yeah.
And I think that we're actually doing ourselves a disservice when we are rushing that timeline, which is not to say like, I've had businesses since 2008 and like I don't want to be like, oh, like you're going to have to work 13 years to get to the place that I'm at. That's not what I'm trying to say here, but what I am saying is if whatever business it is that you are wanting to bring to life, if that is actually your career, like allow for that evolution to happen in the timeline it is meant to happen. And, the kind of example that I like to give is like, I studied 4 years to become an acupuncturist. I then had to study another year on top of that to pass my licensing exams. And so I didn't even really get to build my acupuncture business until I was like 5 years into investing in my education, right? And it's like there's this illusion out there of like, oh, I'm gonna put up a couple of Instagram posts and then I'm gonna be like this like online coach that has this insane following, and like we almost like we sell this idea of fast being better. We sell this idea
Yeah.
of like the dopamine rush even in building businesses that are meant to regulate our nervous systems. And so
Right.
for me it's like, okay, so slowing it down doesn't mean there's no growth. Slowing it down means that there's intentionality. Slowing it down means that there's
Yeah.
space for you to digest things as they're happening. Slowing it down means that you have the ability to like pivot as needed too. It's really hard to turn a really fast moving ship, but you can turn a ship that's gone off course if it's moving a bit slower and you can do it more safely. And so I think that the two pieces of this equation is what a lot of people out there are selling, and what I think you and I are sort of like the counterculture to is, grow fast, grow to an exponential number that is unsustainable. And what we're saying is slow growth is not bad. Slow growth is actually sustainable. And like, be really mindful of the investments that you're making, not just on the financial end, but also on the like time and energetics end to this thing that means so much to you, you know?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I feel that in a certain, I mean, really, even if you're going super fast and you're investing tons of time and energy and money into working with whoever to get to the end goal of your business faster, there's no replacement for time spent in your business. And this is the mistake that I see a lot of people making is they see somebody else's business model, they want to copy it, they invest tons of money to try and do that template for themselves, and then they realize this doesn't work for me. This isn't the kind of business that I want. It doesn't work for my nervous system. It doesn't fit in my life. And it could be as simple as, hey, I don't want to manage a team of 7 people. I don't want to be responsible for their salaries. And so that's oftentimes what happens in a big business is we do have to manage other people and other people's salaries, and it takes us out of our gifts and potentially why we started the business in the first place. And so that's why I always really caution trying to follow somebody else's model to the T without giving ourselves the time, as you say, to really live our lives and feel how that business feels in our life, and give ourselves permission, as you say, to pivot and make shifts, which is a lot easier to do when we can take it in a stepwise way, as opposed to when we're $50,000 down the line, you know? And I compare it to going to the gym and like crushing out sets at the squat rack with bad alignment and too much weight really quickly, right? We see that all the time. And I think we can recognize that analogy from, we know that, yeah, that's physically not good for our bodies. It's not going to lead to sustainable health or really help our muscles. We're doing the same thing in our businesses. We're overriding the need for like a foundation and taking the time slowly, as you say, to do things in alignment with intention. And that does get faster. If you spend time with a personal trainer in the gym and you're very conscious of your alignment, taking on the weight that your body can handle in that alignment, you have to think about it, going down and coming up with keeping your body in line. You can start to do that quicker and take on more weight and change up your movements just the same as you will in your business if you start with that strong foundation. But people just miss that because they just see the glittery end goal and they want to go straight to it. And for some reason, we can recognize that it's not good for our bodies to do that in the gym, and we're going to crash after a week and never go back. But this is what I want to help people draw the connection to, is we're doing the same thing in our businesses. And the thing that happens, which I feel so sad about, is they start off really fast with too much weight in their business, and then they think, I have failed, when it doesn't work out, or they crash and burn, right? They feel like, I just wasn't doing enough. I just wasn't pushing my edge enough. I just wasn't putting myself out there enough.
I mean, that's
right?
the narrative, though.
Yeah, and it's like, then the business coach is, oh, you just need a one-on-one program with me. And that's $1 million to do that one-on-one work with me, right? Or however much it is, or $250,000. And so people keep chasing and chasing. And it's really sad and hard to see people losing their orientation to what success looks like for them, and just feeling badly, like you say, about something that's supposed to be really good for the world and good for them. And also, it can feel just like a huge responsibility to be like, I have to give my gifts to the world. It's my purpose for my whole life. Like, whoa, that's a huge responsibility. Like, of course you're freezing up, you know? And how can we make it more manageable and just give ourselves a break and build something in a way that supports our human needs, which we have forgotten are needs that we should not be overriding. Yeah.
I think I'm sort of compelled to like ask this question to the listeners as like an internal thought process of what does success look like for you, you know? And I think that, you know, it kind of goes back to that part of the conversation where I was saying like there's a regenerative aspect to our businesses that we're trying to build, at least in this community, and there has to be like a this is good enough, you know, this is
Yeah.
the level at which this feels like the perfect balance for me and my life, you know. And so if and I would encourage people to like stop thinking about success as like what is the number, whether that's client load or, you know, the number in your bank account, and start thinking about it in terms of like what does that feel like in your life, you know? Is
Yeah.
it that you have plenty of time to be able to, you know, invest in your family relationships and in your friendships? Does it mean that you have the flexibility to go on vacation at a moment's notice? Does it mean, you know, like think about the intangibles of what you would like to build into your life and have your business support those goals instead of
Yeah.
chasing after this shiny object of a, you know, $1 million business, or the shiny object of having, you know, 50 clients a week or whatever that is, because that goal will continue to just like you'll get there and it'll feel like, oh, I thought this is the thing that was going to make me feel happy and
Yeah.
whole. And rather you get there and it's like, oh, the emptiness is still here, and so then I must be pushing myself further, I need to be pushing my edges more. And so, you know, instead of buying into that concept, like, can we slow it down and be like, okay, so what does success look like for you? And can that
Yeah.
idea of success be good enough for now and have room to expand and grow and evolve? Like for you, for example, you have, is she 3? Did she just turn 3 or
Yeah.
4? Yeah.
She just turned 3 yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like as Aurora grows, your idea of success is going to look really different.
Yeah.
And
Seasons,
how
different
wonderful.
seasons.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, how wonderful would it be to have a business that evolves with your life rather than the other way around?
So, so true. And the question that I'll piggyback on top of your question to people who are listening is, what do I actually need? What do I, my body, my nervous system, my family need in our lives to be in balance? So yeah, what does success look like? And also, what do I need? Like, some people really need time to walk outside every single day. Some people need, you know, downtime, or they need to have some financial stability. So that might mean taking on a stable, different job unrelated to their quote unquote purpose. So it's really getting clear on, what do I need time for? And where have I cut those corners and made decisions based on how worthy I think they make me to my business or to my ability to achieve success, right? We make all these decisions like, I'm going to be more worthy of my success if I have 5 meetings a day or 8 meetings a day, right? Or if I skip all my family dinners and work through them. So it's really like, where am I making decisions out of alignment, and what does a decision in alignment look like for me? And otherwise, again, you're just overriding and you're going to crash if you're
Yeah.
burning the candle at both ends, or you're not giving yourself time to eat right or cook or listen to music. Or, yeah, for me, as you say, it's to be with my family and to be available to community. You know, like for me, one of my values is community and making time for in-person friendships and to do things in my community that nurture it. And so I'll give an example. We have a friend, and they had a newborn baby a few months ago, and they have a giant dog, and they needed help with their dog one day and their toddler. And we were like, hey, yeah, bring them over because this new mama needs help. And I just think, if we can't do that, like, what is the point of what we're building? If we don't have time to say like, yeah, let me help my neighbor out with the newborn baby, with her toddler and her dog, then we've lost all sense of like priorities, you know?
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's what that looks like for me, and every person will have their own version of what that looks like for them. And especially as moms of toddlers, I had moments of real clarity and confusion where she'd be tugging at my leg and I'd be answering an email and I would be saying like, hey, just wait, baby, mommy's just working. And I heard her say that to one of her toys. And I was like, whoa, okay, that really, because that was what she was starting to internalize. And of course we need to work and have resources, but it's like, that's a giant red flag flashing light of like, hey, you need to have better boundaries, and this is important for her to not internalize that.
Yeah.
And for me to be able to have that flexibility of schedule. And that might mean not giving my all to my business and having some sort of stable income, right? And letting it be a season, because she's only going to be little for a few more years.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so I think it's really important for people to take an assessment of what matters in their life and where are they making these decisions based on worthiness. Like, if I don't answer this email, I'm going to get fired, or, okay, that's probably not the workplace that's a right fit for you right now, because you shouldn't have to compromise in so many corners of life.
Like, we forget that we have choice in prioritizing, you know? I think that we forget that, like, you have, like, there was a clear fork in the road there for you when Aura started talking to her dolls like that. And, you know, someone else could have taken that moment as like, I feel guilty about this, but I don't have a choice in this. I have to work. You know, this is the thing that's providing for my daughter. And for you, that was a moment where you were like, actually, providing for my daughter in this way is not actually going to like help with my more long-term goals of what kind of person I want to help her develop into. And I think that that's a really important piece to name there, is that a lot of times people feel like they don't have choice because their nervous systems are locked into that sympathetic fight or flight mode. Our culture validates the overwork and the overhustle. We get, lots of rewards for being seen as being busy and being a boss babe, and actually that pivot for you of like reprioritizing was able to happen because you're a more slow person, and you looked at that pivot and was like, oh, I see how this looks like down the road, and I'm gonna choose this fork instead of that one. And so, like, I think that this is why nervous system work is such a crucial part of what it is that I teach. And nervous system work is slow, y'all. Like, there's a reason why, my program is 9 months, is because I recognize that nervous systems do not just change overnight like that. They need evidence. They need help to see. They need help to feel safe and secure. And that's not a thing that happens overnight, because that wiring is so ingrained in us from our families, from our culture, from society. And so to actually do the opposite thing that you had the skills and the tools to be able to do is really hard for folks,
Yeah. And it's because it's so normalized. Like, we've built that muscle of normalizing stress. And for me, I really realized, like, I don't feel like a success in my work or in my role as a parent in those moments, So, and it's being able to recognize, like, yeah, I need to earn money, of course, but I know that I can do it in a way that I can have presence with her and like chunk my time better. And what's really pivotal for folks is when they start to be able to catch in those moments of like working out of stress and scarcity, and where they have normalized being in the boiling water. I always use that analogy of the frog in the boiling water. And because we're surrounded by marketing messages that teach us that it's advantageous or admirable to be able to function in boiling water, and that we should, we've been praised for it for so much of our lives, especially if you're in your kind of mid 20s to mid to late 30s. We kind of grew up in that realm of hustle and, just live for the weekends, etc. So we've really normalized being in that culture, and we're sold that it's better. And so it's being able to recognize and reorient, and as you say, give our nervous systems the kind of proof and security that we can praise ourselves for slowness, right? We praise ourselves for speed. And so slowing down feels like a risk, right? It really feels like, am I worthy? Who's going to accept me when I prioritize slowness? Because we don't have the experience yet, and it's up to us to give ourselves that experience. And part of the way I think that we can do that is by sharing messages like this, where we really just normalize it for folks. And it does get easier as you build this new way of being. You start to recognize when you're in the boiling water, and then it starts to feel better to be out of it. Slowly it starts to feel better to be out of it.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it doesn't always feel better to be out of it, because our worth hasn't lived over here yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really, it's a process. And I love that your program is long for that reason.
I also want to say that, like, the slowness also has purpose. It's not like a purposeless slowness. It is so full of purpose, because I like to use the analogy of plants, because when plants are taking in, water and sunshine and all of the like yummy nutrition during the daytime, what it's actually doing at nighttime is integrating all of that. And so we see that plants actually grow the most at nighttime. I don't know if any of you guys have gardens, but like peas, for example, I love growing peas because they literally grow inches overnight in the springtime. And all of that is because of that rest period of nighttime. We're able to take in and integrate. Like, slow means integration to me. And so for those of you who are like maybe feeling a bit of resistance to the slow, and feeling a bit of resistance to a bit of the like more sustainable long game, I want to also stress that it's not a purposeless slow. It is so full of purpose.
Yeah, I 1000% agree. And I love the plant analogies. I really mix analogies a lot. I go from like fire to plants to all these things, but I have been thinking about and ruminating on that aspect a lot lately, in that even in the wintertime, that's a rest period. And as you say, at nighttime, or there's so many things going on in the underground, and they need that environment, i.e., we need that to be the environment that just allows that underground growth to happen, and doesn't always try and interfere and always just focus on the blooming, right? A plant cannot bloom if it does not have roots, if it hasn't grown a stem, if it hasn't grown leaves. It's not going to get to the point where it gets to bloom. And it's so beautiful also to have folks experience just the amazing insights that can come. I think that we forget how much information and guidance and intuition we can receive in that slowness. I akin it to just when we're fast, like we have blinders on, we like see a goal and we're like, that's where I'm going, and I'm going really fast. And when we slow down, we open up and we can look around at our environment, because we're not busy doing anything, because we are letting things integrate. And when we can slow down and look around, we then become receivers. And that's how our nervous systems work as well, right? You learn this so much with toddlers. When they're having a tantrum, they can't learn. You can't be like, okay, you're upset because hey, still you can't, that's not a teachable moment in the tantrum, right? That's a moment to just hold the container and say like, hey, I'm your safe parent. I'm right here with you. while you're doing your thing, and then afterwards we talk about it. So it's the same, I feel like, with our bodies and our nervous systems, that if we're constantly in that stress mode, yeah, we literally cannot integrate information. You know? So that's why I just love giving people that slow time and that permission. And I do it in the way of like, hey, you're actually gonna learn a lot about yourself and your business and the unique thing that you have, the unique perspective that actually can amplify your work in the world by slowing down, right?
Yeah.
It's by leaning into the slowness that we can actually be more impactful.
Yeah. I did a little bit of an experiment with this newest cohort of BAM because I noticed the last couple times that I ran it, people hit this wall at about a month and a half, 2 months into the program. And they start asking these questions of like, why am I so tired all the time? Why is it that I want to take a nap in the middle of the day? I feel like I want to do all these things, but I can't do these things. And had all this like guilt and shame and like just struggle around it. And so instead of addressing it, like
You mean they feel like
beforehand,
they want to do all these things, sorry, in their business? Like they want to do all these things, but they just are too, like they're tired to do it?
And sometimes it's not even just their business. Sometimes it's like just in their life, they're like, I'm tired. And so I kind of wanted to like see if it would show up again this round. And so basically like the first half of the curriculum is we talk about safety, and then we talk about the nervous system, and we talk about like the values and integrity of your business and what sort of values do you want to uphold and what ethics do you want to uphold. And so it's a lot of like internal yin, noticing, awareness, that kind of work. And like just right on clockwork. Like this is the moment that we're in this cohort. Again, we're about a month and a half in, and this last group call that I had with them, several of them were like, I'm so tired. What is going on? And I really think it's because we're giving people permission to slow down. And so then their body is like, yes, please, I want to slow down. Yes. And then that brain says, no, but we need to override this. There's something wrong with you. There must be something wrong with you because you're tired. Because that's what we've been told our whole lives. And instead, like what I've loved doing is just like helping them reframe that as this like yin purposeful time. And so slow down because that's what your body's asking you to do. Slow down because you've never given yourself permission to do that before. Slow down because like what other program says go take a nap, you know? And I tell my clients all the time, go take a nap. And I actually learned that from my husband who, and I think this is just who he is, but like anytime something big happens in his life, whether it's good or bad, he powers down. Like it's not even like a choice thing. He has like no choice in the matter. He has to take like a 30-minute nap. And so
powering down.
Yeah. And so we've started calling them process naps because it's like, oh, he gets a hard call from his family. Oh, I've got to take a process nap. Oh, we went and looked at a piece of land that we really liked. I got to go take a process nap, you know? And so it doesn't matter if it's like a celebration or a challenge. Like his brain says, I need to organize this. And that doesn't happen in consciousness. It happens in the unconsciousness. And so he literally will just like just come home and just pass out for like 30 minutes. And I so admire that about his nervous system. And then he wakes up and he's totally like, hey, I'm ready for the rest of the day.
Yeah. Doodaloo, downloaded. Yep. Ready to go. Yeah. I love that. And I'm curious, like, I'm really curious for people to take a look back at like their younger years and think about what their relationship with themselves and what they witnessed their caregiver's relationship being with basic human needs, right? And just because I feel like the ability to say as an adult in your day, I want to do this with my business, or I want to take a break because I'm tired, is something that I personally have had so much resistance to. Like I can really override my
Yeah,
needs,
same.
right?
Same.
And have been praised for that, right? It's like Emma's the hardest worker. She'll never need a break. She'll catch every single detail, right? So it's like such a strong narrative. And I'm really, really thinking, again, everything I look at is through the lens of my toddler. And I'm thinking about the connection with our earliest needs as children, and then our ability to still access different needs or desires as an adult. So for example, like if she's telling me I'm done eating and I'm like, oh, but you've only had 2 bites. And that's me then like trying to override her need of what she's telling me. I'm full, or I want to color my fire truck blue, or I don't want this, or I do want that. And we slowly like can so easily teach the kids to conform and do what we want to do,
Yeah.
listen to the music we want to listen to, et cetera, et cetera. And I actually feel, and I'm curious, but I feel like there's a direct correlation to adulthood where we then lose the ability to say, well, I want to do this for my business. I have this unique idea. Or I'm going to rest, even though I have 15 things on my to-do list. My body's saying rest. Oh, must be for a reason. I'm going to go rest. Right? And so I'm kind of doing that experiment now, and I'm weaving that more into my work as well, because I really feel like there's a direct correlation there. And I
Yeah.
love that your husband is doing that. And maybe it's something he was taught, or maybe it's something that he was able to, or like you say, he really can't help it. But I feel like the more we can start to pay attention to our little needs, and as you say, the more we slow down, the more we become aware of our needs, because our body finally goes, like, I think here's the real link. Our body finally goes, this person, consciousness, this mind, the mind attached to me is finally listening.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to bubble up all my needs.
Yeah.
It's the same with toddlers. If they don't think the caretaker is listening and has really an openness and ability to listen and accept whatever need they're saying, they're going to do less and less and less, because their survival directly depends
Yeah.
on that caretaker being present with them. So they're so
Absolutely.
smart at like, oh, if my need stresses mom out, I'm going to not tell her that need.
Yeah.
Right? Or she tells me I need to eat more or eat less or eat differently, I'm going to do that to conform with her. They try so hard. And I feel like really our own creativity and intuition and bodily needs are the same way with our minds. Is the mind attached to me? Is it a loving caretaker? Will it receive me? And so the more we start to open up that conversation, the more we bubble up. Because if it's closed, our body's not going to, it's going to communicate, because eventually we're going to hit that tipping point where we get disease or sick, right? But before then there's like little nudges, but it's just, it doesn't know how to be listened to at a whisper. And so it only knows how to yell. So it's like
Yeah.
being the loving parent of your body and your ideas is something I'm really working with a lot right now.
I love that. And I love that analogy and that like direct practicality back to childhood. And I also want to add a little bit of an alternative experience, just because this is my experience, is regardless of, like, I feel like I had parents who were very good at meeting my needs. I never felt like I had a ton of pressure to eat, whatever it is that they wanted, and all those like very tangible examples that you gave. But I watched my parents. I mean, I don't think I knew this at the time, but I was observing my parents and how they responded to their own bodily needs. And so
Yeah.
I have a dad who worked 70 to 90 hours a week. And so saw him just override, drink a case of Coke over like 2 or 3
Whoa.
days to like, to have the caffeine to like keep going.
Stimulate.
Yeah. And then I have my mom who struggled a lot with body image. And So she would go on all of these outrageous diets and would override her need for food all the time, you know? And so I think that, there might be some listeners who are listening to this and being like, yeah, I totally resonate with Emma's, experience of like, those examples of pushing toddlers to do things that are uncomfortable to their bodies. And then there might be some who are like, hey, I didn't grow up with that kind of family, and why am I still this way? And it might be going back to, and again, we're not blaming our parents. It's not like my parents were doing anything wrong. Like they had their own specific narratives and their stories that they were playing out. But the influence of their behavior to themselves was influential to how I grew up thinking that I also need to override some of my bodily needs, and it might not have been like directly communicated in the like you have to eat your peas, but you start noticing the things and you start emulating what your parents do. And so I think
Yeah.
it's worth just throwing out those two different examples out there, just as reference points for where this stuff comes from.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I'm so glad that you brought that up because it's even me. Like I actually also didn't really have the experience with my parents, with food or I mean, we did have to eat our eat our vegetables. That I guess that was one of them, but my parents were very different. My mom really, really worked a lot, and really that's really had that installation of yeah, super hard work and it doesn't matter kind of if you're tired or whatever. And my dad was a bit the opposite, very artistic, very, I need this and I'm doing it because I need it and there's no other justification required. And so but I was also always in very many ways given a lot of permission to follow my own wants and needs, even, and having those two examples, as you say, that just kind of infused me just by proximity. And that's huge as young people growing up. And I still internalize so much, even from just society and from the ways that I just naturally began to show up. I think we kind of choose, like I was naturally just kind of a hard worker, but then as soon as you start to receive praise for that, you just as a young person start doing it more and more and more. And so that's even, I think, a third way that we can receive these messages and internalize these behaviors of worthiness is like either directly or indirectly from our caretakers, but then also just from the world at large, right?
Yeah.
We really quickly see what parts of me are praised and put more energy into growing those parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
And yeah, so for folks listening, I think that was just a really good thing to add, that there's many ways, and it's not anything wrong. This is just the human experience, right?
Yes. Really important to say that.
Yeah.
I want to shift the conversation a little bit because I definitely want to talk about creativity, and I think part of me also wants to talk about creativity in terms of safety, because I think that that's kind of what we're talking about here is like we did all these things in order to find safety and belonging in our families, and that is sometimes counter to our ability to tap into our own creative spirits. And so I think I have this theory, and I kind of want to throw it out there and see what you think of it. But when we look at reproduction in bodies, I spent a long time in the world of fertility acupuncture. I started noticing that there's two ways in which bodies, and also like plant bodies as well, reproduce, which is you put that body, whether it's plant or animal, into a state of extreme stress, and it starts thinking, oh my God, I'm going to die. And so as a last ditch effort to, spew my DNA out into the world, it reproduces.
Wow.
We see this in tomatoes. I'm going to use tomatoes as an example. Like if you stress the crap out of a tomato plant, which is kind of what we do with hothouse tomato growing, is they'll put all of their energy into growing fruit, which is the reproductive body of that plant. And it really like makes the sweetest, juiciest tomatoes, because it's like the tomato's like, I'm gonna die. There's no water.
Right. I need
Right?
to spread my seeds. I have to make the
Yeah.
best fruit possible to do so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
The other way that reproduction happens is by creating a really safe, nourished environment, you know? And so what I saw as like my clientele base when I was in fertility medicine were really stressed out bodies that didn't think they were going to die. And so, like, women who are working 60, 70 hours in the corporate world, you know, their body is like, oh my God, I need to always be in the sympathetic fight mode. But it doesn't feel like I'm going to die. But what that means is the body says, okay, so we're going to deprioritize blood flow to the ovaries, to the uterus, and we're going to prioritize all that energy going into brain and like moving limbs, essentially. And I see this in the creative space as well. Like, we romanticize the struggling artist, and I can reflect back even on my own, like, sort of a recent shift for me is realizing that like I was so attached to my creativity that I would almost put myself into struggle to like have the words come out, you know? Like, I produce my best work when it comes to like my own writing when I'm in a state of like angst almost, you know?
But do you, or is that just what you've internalized to be true?
I think it's what I've internalized to be true. And it's been like
So it
what
has
my
been true.
past has been, you know? Like, I look through my journals and I'm like, oh my gosh, some of the best work is like when I'm in the middle of a breakup or like in the middle of fighting with my partner, you know?
Yeah.
And what I've started trying to do for myself is, can I shift that needle of creativity to a state where I feel safe and nourished and I can create, you know? And so instead of having myself be existing in this plane of like scarcity to find that creative spark, can I exist in the space of abundance to find that creative spark? And
Yes.
and I think that is such a struggle for people. You know, we don't allow our bodies, we don't allow our souls to feel safe because we've romanticized this other side of it, which is like the like angsty, like create out of desperation and scarcity.
Yeah, and that's the entrepreneur journey too. Like that, this ties
Yes.
actually so perfectly. Yeah, this is why I love focusing on creativity. You just like I've just loved listening to you tell that story and draw those analogies. And my brain sees such a connection between our work ethic and our entrepreneurial journey, right? It's like we've romanticized this struggle so much and the scarcity and the starving ourselves. And by starving, I mean like of the nourishment and pace that we actually need to flourish.
Yes.
Not just food wise, but just not meeting our own needs. We just think like that's the template that we're following. And this is like, I just want to like yell this out from the rooftops of the world that this is not the way it has to be. Like there is this other end of the spectrum. Like, look, happy plants make beautiful babies too.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, and it's like, I've done some of my best writing from places of stress, from, you know, like through grief and loss and breakups and things like that. Of course, I've had amazing works of writing from those places, and I'm sure every artist will be able to relate. And of course, art and creativity is an amazing way to express those hard times. It's a tool and a form of expression, but that doesn't mean that we have to have that environment in order to create great art or in order to have great businesses. So I love, to me, creativity is such a tool and a window, and it gives us a lens that we can look through to see what is our relationship with our work and our needs. To me, it's the same as the relationship with our creativity, as you just beautifully articulated through the tomato story.
And
So if we can, so I feel like if we can give ourselves this arena of creativity, it's like a low stakes arena through which we can start to rewrite those internal narratives around success and expression and nourishment in a little creative space.
Yeah. And you've been such a beautiful model for me personally, like on that, you know, you have such beautiful writing that you put out and share publicly. And it reads different than, I don't know, a lot of stuff I see out there, because like you can almost read the energy of people's words and sense whether they're in scarcity or abundance. And to me, like when I read what you put out, you only put out things that are in abundance. You know, I'm sure you have piles and piles and piles of words that you don't share. And, you know, what you do choose to share is always in regulation. And so I think I want to just highlight that for entrepreneurs who are also putting out their work, is like when you share out of regulation, then you're inviting your audience to also join you in regulation. And that in and of itself is medicine.
Yeah, thank you. And I feel it's so important to, again, provide something that normalizes that state of being. And really, I'm always in that conversation with myself where, especially because I've been involved in so many kind of really large and successful, influential, spiritual, entrepreneurial businesses, et cetera, in the background, I have a real, I could like default into sharing from scarcity and urgency really easily.
Yeah.
And I know that it leads to sales, right? So it's a real, not that it's, I don't want to say it's hard for me to share it in a grounded way, because I don't think it is hard. It's normal. That's my normal. That's my default.
Yeah.
But I consciously witness this other narrative come up, and I consciously choose to not feed that narrative. It's like that. Do you feed the wolf or the? I don't know what, you know that story, the narrative. It's like
which wolf do you feed?
Yeah, which wolf do you feed? Exactly. It's similar to that. I'm consciously choosing to do it a different way. And I really want to provide that example for folks. And again, like going back to the beginning of our conversation, normalize the slowness of the process, and not just measuring our success by, I put up a post, I get a bunch of sales instantly because the post hit enough pain points and made people feel agitated enough that they had to hit the buy button.
Yeah.
The most recent analogy that I've made for this is the diamonds come out of coal analogy that we've all heard our entire lives. Like, it's so problematic. What's wrong? Don't be coal, be a diamond. Diamonds are made under so much pressure. So the marketing sells us, it creates an itch, and then it sells us the cream for the itch.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I just think that's so unnecessary. So I really am trying to model that for my own self, and it just it feels a lot better, and it has slowly become my new normal, where I can be like, oh yeah, this just feels better than doing it that way.
Yeah. And I think that to name that as integrity is really important, because you know, Emma and I aren't sitting here being like, oh, toxic marketing doesn't work. Like, toxic marketing 100% works. And
works so well.
Yeah, like, and you've had direct experience working behind the scenes of some of these coaches. Like, you see how well it works. And to be in integrity of the spirit of your business, to be in the integrity of the spirit of my business, I know that even though that is the thing that works, or that works faster, I would say, it's still so much more valuable for me to do it in integrity. And it is slower, you know. I
Yeah.
will say that it is going to be a bit slower of a pace, but it also means that, like, when somebody signs up to work with me, I know that it's not coming from a place of like, please fix me, please rescue me, you are the answer.
Yeah.
They're coming at it from
Yeah.
a place of, oh, you're going to help me find my own answers. And that's such an
Empowered.
important, yeah, and that's such an important part of the relationship dynamic that gets established like right at the beginning from the marketing.
Oof, yeah. That person has their own responsibility in the program as well, that you're not going to be chasing them to do the work. And actually, Kat, what I like, here's I think what happens. Here's what I've seen happen time and time again. It's like these big businesses, they influence so many people, they grow to such a size, the lifestyle of the people who work there grows to such an expensive size that they then have to make those sales because their operating expense is $100,000 a month or $200,000 or $300,000 a month. That's their base operating expense. So this, again, going back to the very beginning of our conversation, is why it's such a slippery slope to grow so fast, right? You don't build that relationship with your resources. Your life could get really big and expensive really quickly. And then you have to make those sales. So then you start telling yourself, well, because the work I'm putting out in the world is so beneficial, it's like one evil for the greater good of the many, right? We start to justify it. So it's
And
like
that's
the
when you
cost of
start
this. Yeah, it's a
feeding,
little bit
yeah,
toxic.
yeah,
It's
that's
a little
when
bit
you start
toxic, but
feeding
it's
the
helping
wolf.
so many people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to sell them on their pain. And so we start to justify it. And then our businesses and our lives also require it because we start to live at such a grand scale.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the business has 13 employees it has to pay for, right? And then we see so much crash and burn on the inside of the business, but also we get tricked into these sales tactics.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why it's very important, I think, to move at a human pace with your business and to stay at a pace that just fits in your life, and you don't start, because then you get owned. Your business starts to own you. You become less empowered. You feel less empowered, even though obviously there is always choice. You lose that integrity with your business. And I love the way that you work with clients in your marketing. You're inviting them in with integrity, but also you in your business, in your growth. You're like, yeah, multiple six figures would be great. And probably, Kat, you could have gotten to that place already if you used different marketing tactics, right?
Possibly.
But you chose not. Yeah, but you chose not to.
Yeah.
And so then you're building a business that has a sustainable foundation, that all of the costs stay in check and they match the work that you're putting out and the offers that you're creating. Like, it's so important. It's so important to do it that way.
Yeah.
So I really want to get that across to folks.
Yeah, and I think that people also don't talk about the like dysregulation that happens when like you catch your tail. Like, it's sort of like when a dog chases its tail and it like finally catches it and doesn't know what the fuck to do with it after. Like, you know, I think one of the most dysregulating moments of my business was the first time, well, I took a business course and, you know, they sold me on the multiple, like, we're gonna get you 10K in a month within 12 weeks. And like, we totally got there. And I was so in dysregulation about making that 10K because I'd grown up with a story of my dad mostly being like, yeah, like, you should have a job, but it should really be like a side thing because you're a woman, you know, and you should be working because you want to work, not because you have to work. And so I never in my life thought I would be making 10K in a month. And when I hit that, I was in such dysregulation about receiving that I don't know what happened to the 10K. Like, I spent it so quickly because I went full on into a flight mode. I needed to get it out of my bank account as quickly as possible. And there was no support in that program to help me move that. And if anything, it was a lot of like, yoo-hoo, like congrats, and meanwhile nobody
Go
knows.
buy yourself something.
Yeah, nobody knows how difficult that process is because it's hitting up against so many internalized beliefs that I had grown up with. And so, you know, now, like, having done so much work around receiving, 10K is like, if my business isn't bringing in 10K, like, it's again, like, the expenses have gone up. I have employees. I have to support myself and multiple other people now. Like, it's a problem if we don't hit 10K.
Yeah.
But it's all done in regulation now. And so,
Yeah.
you know, when we hit months that are 30, 40K, there's a plan for where that money goes, because it's like, okay, so this is going to be put in a particular subset of my bank account because now we need to be planning and making sure that the business stays sustainable, instead of me being like, holy fuck, like, what are we going to do with this? And then like running away from it, you know? And so I think it's important to name too that, like, dysregulation is not just about like, oh, I can't hit my numbers. Dysregulation also happens on the other side of it. And if you're really working on the nervous system, you're tending to both sides of dysregulation.
100%. And I love that you share that and are doing that work in your business and with the people that you're working with, because it is, again, it's such an important piece, and it's something we see all the time. People start to hit those months and then they don't know what to do with the money, or it becomes, it just flies straight out the window. And it's important to keep in that regulation, and that's where we can start to rely on or fall back on, how does it feel to be regulated? And then we can quickly notice when we're out of dysregulation, right? Even if we just work on it, we work on it in one area to begin with, we start to notice it in other areas of our lives quicker, right? So you would start to notice, like, okay, I've mastered the regulated kind of sales income part of it, but now my relationship on this end is not feeling, you know, in alignment, or it's feeling dysregulated. And so we can start to make these little tweaks in other areas.
And it's such an important practice.
And it does take a process.
Yeah, and it's such an important practice. And if we can start looking at nervous system regulation as a practice, instead of being like, oh, I'm going to get to a point where I'm calm and then nothing's going to faze me anymore. Like, no, like, stuff comes up in the business all the time.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. And that's the same conversation of, oh, I'm going to hit 10K a month in my business and then everything's going to be fine forever and ever here on out. Or I'm going to hit 50K a month in my business and everything's going to be fine forever and ever here on out. It's always a process and a practice, and never an end goal. And it's so important to, like, go back to, what is the value of my business? What do I need in my life? Why am I in this business?
Yeah.
What is it doing to my life in the world? And then we can call on that to help us get back to regulation, because when we start to remember what we're doing it for, you know, for you, for your life, for your clients, to have that sustainable income, to have this work exist. It's not just to fund your shopping habit, you know, which it is for a lot of people. So coming back to that value and what your lifelong relationship with your work is, I feel really helps us get back to nervous system regulation and helps us reprioritize.
Yeah.
And kind of knock us out of those states where we always like get frantic and hectic. And something I always say to people, which popped into my mind just now, is that people will fear, oh, I won't know how to hustle anymore. You know, like, if I just give myself permission and time, like, how will I ever get anything done? And I always say, well, don't worry. Like, your muscle of hustle is alive and well. You know, it's going to kick in.
Yeah.
It's going to kick in.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to get things done.
Yeah.
It's the balancing that's needed.
Yeah. And also to add to that is like we're seasonal creatures. We're cyclical animals. And so it's not like once you go to sleep you're never going to wake up again. Like
Yeah.
I mean, we only do that once. But like once you go to sleep, you reliably wake up again. And so, you know, that hustle, you know, to me is just activity. I never want to be in a state of hustle again. Like that's kind of to me is like overactivity. And so if we can just give ourselves the permission to like go into this like more yin phase of our cycles, trusting that the yin actually feeds the yang.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have enough examples of that. We don't have enough examples. We see these shiny goals. We see all the flowers and the lifestyle, and we don't see the other side of it. And even if people get to those shiny goals without feeding the foundation, it's not going to last. It's not sustainable. I've seen it happen so many times.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to just check ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I think something too that you do with your business that I do with my own, that I think is such an important part of this journey is like to think about your business as this like entity. And that entity is someone that you're going to be in a long-term relationship with. And so like, do you need to have the commitment of like forever and ever and ever within 6 months? Or can you build that trust over time and really put in that investment in a way that's timely and appropriate for this relationship, you know? And everyone's relationship to their business is going to be a little different. And I think it's important to keep that in mind as well, is this is a relationship.
We're going to have ups and downs. We're going to have bumps in the road. We're going to both, find a middle ground. That reminds me of the relationship red flag of like super quick commitment right in the very beginning, Somebody buys you a plane ticket across the country after your first date, and people go, "Oh, that's so great. This is it. This is the relationship for me." And actually that can be a red flag in a lot of cases. And it's the same with our businesses. We need to learn to go at a slow pace. Again, this is everywhere in the world, right? Normalizing fast and re-normalizing slow.
Yeah.
So it's with the entity of our business, it's before we get married and spend tons of money and investing and dedicating our whole life to this thing. Let's see if we like each other. Let's see what that business wants to be in the world and how my strengths can match it. And that's where I think, again, the yin and the slowness really opens up that conversation. And being able to access our creativity allows us to be like, okay, what's unique about me? What's my superpower? What's my unique perspective that is a perfect match for this business idea that has come to me? The only way we can really access our true uniqueness and our true superpowers in the world is through caring for these little needs that we have: rest, sleep, time outside, time not working, time being creative, exploring our creative ideas. Then we access that unique puzzle piece that fits with the puzzle piece of our idea, and we can see, how do we fit together? Okay, I can lend this to the relationship. The idea can lend this to the relationship. It's maybe a bit abstract for folks, but it's something that's really helped me stay open to the ideas and the shifts and the adjustments that come along the path, and to remembering that it's a long-term relationship that I'm investing in.
Yeah.
And I'm not just measuring that success by the mountains that I reach or the highs and I'm not judging it or giving up on it because of the lows. It's a real long-term thing that we're in.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. And it's
just
true.
Feels better for me to do it that way. Like, I think we know the truth when we hear it.
Yeah.
something Peter Kelly always says, you'll know the truth by the way that it feels. And something in that just feels more human to me. It's like, yeah, we're humans. We have seasons. We have needs.
Yeah.
We've just forgotten them.
And not to say that like we don't have these really beautiful like lightning bolt moments, but I like as you're sort of sharing and using this analogy of like a romantic relationship in terms of the business, like I look back on my romantic history and it's like I did ask a lot of my partners like right off the bat, like prove it. Tell me how much you love me. You know, show me how much you love me. Like I want you to prove it and like put in this like big like gesture in the beginning. And you know, that was also what I was asking of my business in the beginning. You know, there's a reason I took all those courses that were like, yeah, like you get to build a 6-figure business in 12 weeks. And, you know, I fell for all of that because I was seeking that dopamine rush. And on this side of it, it's like, oh, actually, it feels so good to have built this business from a place where there's been a lot of reciprocity and it's been a lot of like give and take and a lot of like, ooh, does this feel good? Does this not feel good? What about this needs to shift? What about this? Yeah, exactly. It's that secure communication instead of that like one-sided, I need you to prove it to me sort of energy.
Yeah.
Like we're
and
asking
also,
our businesses to prove themselves to us before they're ready to.
And for you to prove to yourself, right? There's that element too of like, I want to prove this to myself that I can do it, that I can do it in this way, that I think I'm supposed to do it, that I can do it big and fast and flashy. So in that way, it's like us, again, needing to prove our own worth to ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Which is why I love the creativity conversation, because by giving ourselves permission to access our creativity, we are saying, my ideas are worthy in the way that they come out, at the time that they come out, at the pace that they come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are not more worthy when you make 10K a month in your first month of business, or in your 10th month of business, or in your 3rd year of business. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like we ask our businesses and our partners, we get attached to the drama and the chase, and we ask that of ourselves as well. Instead of cultivating that relationship of worthiness, no matter what the pace, no matter what the output.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not more worthy when we're stressful, when we're stressed out.
Yes. That is absolutely a truth.
Yeah. I think so. And it's a constant reminder. I remind myself of that every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just going to ask, like, is there anything else that you feel like needs to be shared in this moment? Any last minute little like tidbits?
Yeah. I'll share one. Don't forget about your joy. Joy for the sake of joy, you guys.
Yeah.
Unstructured time, not related to productivity, not related to health, not related to your business or money. Joy and just a respite from all of this. Like, wander through your mind. The wisdom is found in the wander. I always say that. Go for a walk without a podcast on. Go to bed and read a fantasy novel. You know, clean the kitchen with jazz music on. Drive without the radio on. Like, feed your joy, and you'll feed your worthiness, and you'll feed your own definition of success outside of all of your work, outside of your business. Like, give yourself space to just be a joyful human for the pure sake of joy. Yeah.
I feel like that's toddler medicine.
Totally.
You're speaking from your inner toddler there.
I really am. Like, there's just play. Like, we need it. We need it. It's so, we need to find what that is for us, and just, we need a respite. We need a corner of our lives that isn't striving and attaching to worthiness or even success, or even just trying to put our work out into the world, which is such a beautiful venture to do and so meaningful, but it doesn't, again, worthiness is not attached to even how spiritually aligned your business is, right? Yeah. So even though we're having these conversations about balance and alignment in our creative and spiritual businesses, still give yourself a break from that, you know? Put this conversation down and just get outside of it. Get outside, touch your life again. That's my favorite thing to tell people. Go engage in your life. Put your hands in the dirt. Push a wheelbarrow, shovel your driveway. Like, yeah. Don't ever get so successful that you don't shovel your own driveway from time to time, you know? Or scrub your own floors. Gosh, yeah. That's honestly like what I want to leave people with is we get so serious about these conversations, and they are serious and they are important, and our work is important and the way we do it is important. But it cannot be more important than making space in your life to be a human in all the ways that you need to.
Yeah. That felt so nourishing to land with. Thank you so much for having this long-awaited and anticipated conversation with me, Emma. It's always so lovely to connect with you.
Yeah.
Can you please direct folks to where they can find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Emma Rose Tate. Same handle on TikTok. I'm playing the TikTok world. It's very interesting over there. And my website, emmarosetate.com. That's where most of my resources are found. You can sign up for my newsletter. That's the best way, or on the IG. And those 3 places.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And yeah, we'll have to do this again.
I hope that we do. Yeah. There's so much more. There's a lot more to unpack, but man, we got a lot.
We did.
A lot in there.
We did.
Yeah. I'm so grateful for your voice in this arena and the way that you're showing and walking a different way and showing people that it's okay and good and that they can do it that way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. People forget, like, you can just do it. You can do it your own way.
You can do it however you want to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm so appreciative of your work and you.
Thank you. I'm so glad that we're friends.
Me too. Thank goodness I had a baby and needed to come for acupuncture.
Right?
That's how we met. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.